Perception is everything. For better or for worse, perception can easily become reality. This is something that is important to be considered in the face of every issue, but especially when considering inequality. So when we started delving into the topic of Mahwah athletics, we became curious. How did the public feel about the attention and publicity each team got? Did some sports get more than others? And if so, which ones?
I do think that certain sports get more publicity than others, even explicitly here at Mahwah, and I think that's just kind of based on social dynamics. I think there are a lot. For example, football gets a lot of recognition, and they get a lot of publicity. But it's also football's kind of built into the American culture in a way that, in today's day and age, is kind of more of an event to go to. So even if you're not a football fan, you might just go to see your friends. Whereas if you're going to a women's tennis match, you're not really going to hang out with your friends. Most of the spectators there are, either friends or parents of the athletes.
I definitely think that Mahwah publicizes some sports more than others in certain seasons because some sports are more exciting than others. I'd rather watch a football game than go to a cross-country meet, and I run cross-country.
Definitely. Like football.
Yes, I think football is like a lot more publicized.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, baseball, obviously you get a great turnout. Football gets a great turnout. But as far as like sports getting equal attention, absolutely not.
Yes.
So it was pretty clear that most people felt that there was inequity in the attention given to the various sports offered here at Mahwah High School. But we wanted to know if that's because of social reasons, or was there more going on behind the scenes? For example, did the scheduling of games, matches, and meets have an effect on how much attention each sport got?
From a business background, you want to have the sports people are coming to in the best spots to make money for the school. Do I think that the time dictates the people going? No. I don't think that because football gets the prime time spots is why they're popular. I think they're popular, like they get those spots because they are popular.
Yes,
Friday
definitely.
nights.
Friday nights, like, that's absurd. If it was on a Thursday, not as many people.
Oh yeah, I think that's definitely a factor. I mean, people are obviously much more likely to go to a game that's on a weekend or a Friday night as opposed to during a weekday.
No, yeah, like if it wasn't on Fridays, then they wouldn't participate. Like if the games weren't at 3 o'clock, if they were like later, then if they were at like 6 o'clock and no one would show up because it's at 3, it's like right after school or something.
So maybe scheduling did have an effect on the popularity, therefore the amount of publicity a sport has. But we wanted to know more. What about the resources for Mahwah athletics? How are they allocated?
Well, I think that it works generally based on how well a team does. If we have a very competitive baseball team, then I could see why they'd be getting more field time on the baseball field than say like I know they're not in the same season, but if like a freshman girls soccer team needed the field, then I could see why a more competitive baseball team would be getting the field. So I think it makes sense, but yeah, there is some favoritism with it a little bit.
I think it's just the way you got to take it as a coach and as an athlete is it's just part of life. Like there's going to be allocation and division no matter what you do in life. Whether you're like I'm a teacher, whether teaching at the time I get to plan or do work or get things done, whether I'm coaching and you just have to work around it. I think that when we find problems with these things are just when the communication slips.
Not at all. Not at all.
Why?
Because the top sports get the most funding, most resources, etc. Compared to like 100% sport.
Especially when the whole bus incident happened. I don't know if you heard about what happened. Like we weren't allowed to have a bus for our last final game and against Grandpa, but football was like everyone could leave early. So I think like they're giving more resources and support for football. What happened? It was our state sectional final, and it was at 3 o'clock, but or it was at 2:50, whatever. And we asked Pelletier and have like a fan bus, and he said no, like it's we don't want to cut school, like too many people, like there's not enough people that would go, and we were so confused. He's like, then like a few weeks later, football goes to NetLife, and whatever it was, there will be a fan bus, and we weren't allowed to have a fan bus, and we went to state sectional finals, and
So now we knew what the perception of Mahwah athletics was among the student body, and as we all know, Perception is everything. But we wanted to know more, so we decided to go all the way to the top. We requested an interview with the athletic director here at Mahwah High School, Roger Pelletier.
I think there are certain sports that garner attention depending on the season, depending on their success level, and when and where they play. I think the difference between a football game and a hockey game sometimes lies in the fact that hockey is played off campus, like bowling, like swimming. So I think something off campus is going to naturally have less of a following as far as spectators than football or soccer or basketball.
Okay, so you would say the sport that gains the most publicity would be football?
I think tradition plays into that notion more so than anything else, but also the success recently of the football team. I've been here 20 years, and there were years where we were down and we weren't so successful, and other sports took precedence over football.
In terms of resources, Mr. Pelletier had a lot of valuable insight.
Well, let's start with field time. Before the season, the coaches sit down and actually have a meeting and decide who's going to practice when and where. I'll use the fall as the best example. I sit down with the 2 soccer coaches and the football coach, and we literally plan out every single day of the fall season starting August 10th through November 15th. And they bargain and negotiate with each other.
Scheduling, too, was a lot more complicated than we had originally assumed. It seemed a base schedule is provided every year by the Big North Conference that Mahwah athletics must then revolve around, but funding was more or less what was to be expected.
I can answer that in two different terms. Each team does do some fundraising. For the most part, every program does fundraising on their own, but every sport is afforded equipment requests, uniforms through the Board of Ed budget and the athletic department budget.
And finally, the fan bus issue. Though it was a bit awkward at first, Pelletier had a very good reason for not providing a fan bus for the girls' soccer final game.
Fan buses are tricky.
Yeah.
Because there's always a time component to a fan bus situation. The instance that you initially asked me about was a girls' soccer game, and the reason that was not approved was because we would have been approving students to leave school during the school day. The game started at 2 o'clock, and we would have been taking spectators out of school on their own and endorsing that.
So does this explanation offer some insight into the indisputable inequality of MHS sports? Yes, but it's up to you to decide whether it's something that calls for change or complacency.